Welcome to Airborne on staugustine.com. I'm Matt Jeffs, and it's good to have in the studio Eclipse Recording Company right here, Paul Linzer. Paul Linzer is the president of the Gamble Rogers Folk Festival. The long-suffering president. I'm sorry, Paul. How are you, sir? How you doing today?
I am alive. I'm doing fine.
The Gamble Rogers Folk Festival is an institution. What year are we in now?
15. We're in year number 15, and I think an institution is... But an institution, it's a fair term. Mm-hmm. It's an institution that seems to continue to evolve and rob me of all the hair I have in my head.
You're going to blame it on that, huh?
I got to blame it. I can't be my genes.
I've heard, you belong in an institution, but that's a whole nother show. So, first of all, Paul Linzer, you don't only do this for a living.
Oh, of course not. No, this is purely volunteer work. My career is based on biology. I'm actually a professor at the University of Florida's Whitney Laboratory and have been there for 28 years. And for the last dozen or so years, I've worked on the biology of mosquitoes from a perspective of a lot of different perspectives, including bioterrorism, disease prevention, annoyance, and we have a very strong connection with the malaria mosquito, which, as most people should be aware, and if you're not, I'll let you know, kills about 2,000 or 3,000 kids every day.
Good gracious.
So, malaria in the world is the number one. Mosquitoes are the number one killer of any kind of organism on the planet.
That's interesting work. Again, as a scientist, what would draw a scientist to Gamble Rogers and the Gamble Rogers Folk Festival?
Well, it's a long story. I'll abbreviate it tremendously. What drew me into this festival is a couple of things. One, I've had a lifelong interest in music and folk music. In fact, started playing the guitar when I was about 12 in response to Bob Dylan. But when we moved to St. Augustine, my kids entered the local school system, and when they were in middle school, a guy named Dan Downs, who was one of the founders of the Gamble Rogers Folk Festival, saw me walking around the grounds of the first Gamble Rogers Folk Festival and basically said, "Why aren't you volunteering to help me?" And since then, I was almost immediately went from being a schlep, which is what I wanted to do. You can imagine having a career as a research scientist is sometimes a fairly heady job, that having the opportunity to be a nail nailer and a screw screwer and a plank lifter was really refreshing in the summer, and I would take vacation time to participate in the festival. Well, about 2 years into my volunteer status, I was elected the treasurer, which I have been ever since. And about 4 or 5 years ago, Dan Downs retired from the festival, and I took over as the president of the not-for-profit organization. So the Gamble Rogers Folk Festival is, in fact, a 501c3.
Remembering the festival from its beginnings, and wasn't the first headliner Arlo Guthrie? Was that the first?
He wasn't
one?
The first, no. He was well in, probably 5 or 6 years into it.
Okay.
But Arlo Guthrie has been there. Richie Havens has been there before.
Right.
There have been a lot of big names from my generation, and newer names as well that are moving on. Gillian Welch played at our festival before anybody knew her, and that was pretty thrilling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now try to bring her back.
Yeah.
Can't afford that. But we did have her at the festival probably 10 years ago or so.
New and exciting things happening this year, different than before. Tell us a little bit about that and its relevance, because I think it has something to say with. It almost sounds like a walking tour. Tell us. I mean, it's fascinating.
Well, the festival, when it was first conceived, there were a lot of different game plans that were put on the table. One of the game plans was that it would be a festival that would take place in St. Augustine. It would be spread around town, because St. Augustine is where Gamble Rogers lived. Gamble Rogers loved St. Augustine. He performed here. Mm-hmm. He really fine-tuned his craft here in St. Augustine. And so one of the original scenarios was to build something in downtown. But at that time, the opportunity existed to use the old St. Augustine Amphitheater the Cross and Sword. For those who've been around long enough to remember that, the Cross and Sword is the location for the festival, and there was very little going on at the Cross and Sword at that time. It was turned over to the county and the city by the state, and the whole state play lost its funding and didn't happen anymore. So it was run down. The maintenance had not really been done in many years, and it was available for a song.
A song.
So to speak. And so the first, and I think it's the first 10 years of the festival, took place at the St. Augustine Amphitheater. And now about 7 or 8 or 9 years into that run, I think the city and the county realized that because the festival was very successful there, and we used the main stage for our Saturday night show, the big amphitheater stage, and then we set up a tent city and we ran 7 or 8 other stages. But the city and the county decided that the amphitheater had real potential, and so they invested heavily in rebuilding that amphitheater and developing it as a regional or a national venue for fairly high-ranking musical entertainment. And that really kind of changed the tone of the place dramatically. And so although we were one of the first events to use the renovated amphitheater, it didn't really work well as a festival site. It works very well as a single venue, but as a festival site with many different things going on at once, it really is not very effective. And so 3 or 4 years ago, we elected to move out to the county fairgrounds, which had undergone also some renovations and made it more hospitable to the kind of event that we produce. And that worked fairly well, except in reality, St. Augustine folks don't really go out to the fairgrounds very often unless they're twisted to do that. And so over the 2 years that we held it at the fairgrounds, we grew our audience from far away, from over 50 miles away, but our local audience dwindled. And so the original idea, one of the early ideas of having it in downtown St. Augustine emerged again, and we debated the possibility for several months and interacted with our board of directors, some of the trustees that we have, and folks that we communicate with on a regular basis. And eventually we became convinced that there was a real opportunity for the festival to actually flourish downtown. I mean, we really do need St. Augustine to participate in this, the community to participate. It's exciting. It looks very exciting to me.
I think it's appropriate as well. There's a certain apropos nature to having this in the town and strolling the streets. It's just a wonderful idea. Who are we going to see this year?
Well, the festival is going to be on the first weekend of May, which has been the tradition. And so it will actually be Friday night, April 30th, May 1st, and May 2nd. And so there will be a Friday night sit-down show at Flagler Auditorium that will headline Loudon Wainwright III. And I believe Cheryl Wheeler is on the docket for that night as well. The Saturday daytime will include people like David Wilcox, Janice Ian, Lonesome Bert and the Skinny Lizards are local. Patty Larkin, Janice Ian, I mentioned Janice Ian. The headliner for the Saturday night show is Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys. And so what we're actually doing Saturday night, during the day Saturday, there will be 8 stages operating around town, and there are a number of different locations. The Government House is one. Actually, the Trade Winds is a stage. The Art Association is a stage. There are 3 stages that will be in property owned by the city in the Old Spanish Quarter. The Milltop will be a stage.
And that website?
Oh, the website, right. The website is www.gamblerogersfest. So that's one word, GAMBLEROGERSF, as in Frank, EST.org. And so that all of this information that I've been spewing is on that website and more.
Thank you so much.
You're
Paul
very
Linzer,
welcome.
Really appreciate it. President of the Gamble Rogers Folk Festival.
Thank you, Matt.
Those dates again.
April 30th is the opening of the show, Friday night at the Flagler College Auditorium, and then May 1st and 2nd, Saturday and Sunday, downtown all over the place.
Paul Linzer, thank you again.
You're welcome, Matt, and it's good to see you again.
Likewise,
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been
It's
a while.
okay.
You've been Airborne with Matt Jeffs on staugustine.com, bringing interesting people from your world so you can stay dialed into your community and the folks who make it tick. See you next time, everybody.
Airborne rocks.